Hi, everybody. Tina Broad, producing artistic director here at the Idiopathic Ridiculopathy Consortium, and your host for Into the Absurd, our regularly scheduled virtually existential dinner conversation. Today, I am joining you from Times Square, from Broadway, where we are going to welcome Zahara Mcgill to the table tonight. It is her home place. It is her birthplace, and we're going to talk about New York and school in New York and so many wonderful things that she's done here in Philadelphia, forming her own company, First World Theater Ensemble, and the work that she's doing in the community as an advocate and spokesperson. So much happening in the conversation over the next 50 minutes. So we hope that you'll have and send your questions into us here on Facebook Live. If you're in there, send them in on the comments, or if you're in the Zoom room, put them in the chat box for our guest. And over the course of the next 50 minutes, we will get all your burning questions answered. But right now, let us welcome to the table a friend, a wonderful award-winning, multi-award-winning actress, Zahara Mcgill.
Hi.
Hey, girl.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being here. And I see you're on Broadway as well.
Yes, I'm right here.
Well,
oh, wait, what happened? It went away. Wait, let's see if we can try that again.
There
Boom,
you go.
There it is.
Yeah, that's
oh, well, anything can happen on Broadway and theater. So
yeah, we can dress up and we can have the party and we can make theater happen, right? And that is what these conversations are designed to do. So, so Z, I want to start back in New York with your family and your work at NYU and the influence that your family had on your life and on your decision to become an actress.
Yeah. Well, my mother and father, they were in show business. My mother was Clara Smith, the jazz singer. Bessie Smith was my mother's cousin. And Chick Webb back then managed my mother, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan. So my mother was a singer, and later she became a gospel singer with the Clara Ward Singers. And my father was an original hoofer. So he danced with Bilbo, Jingle Robinson, Hines, and Dad. And then later on, he became an international ballroom dancer. So it was really crazy being in a household of performers. And I had two other sisters and one other brother, and I was the only one who went into show business. And it was so funny. I never forget, my sister said, "Oh my God, she's never going to make any money." So it was just hysterical. So my background with my family, they were parents who were just in the business. And I always tell people, I came out the womb ready to perform. I couldn't help myself. So growing up in New York, it was very interesting being a performer, watching my mom and dad as they performed and watching them go into retirement. And it was kind of like sort of me picking up the legacy and taking over and carrying on this torch to continue what my parents had left. So yeah, that's where it came from.
And do you feel like when you were a kid, did your parents encourage you to perform? Did you know when you were a lot younger, did you feel that need to be a part of what they were doing?
Yes. My parents were very, very supportive. And growing up, as we came into the 60s, involved with the civil rights, my mom was a Malcolm X follower. My father was a Martin Luther King follower. And then you had me, the performer, in the middle of all this chaos. And it was just wonderful. They were very supportive in everything I did. They never told me one day that this is not something that you should be doing. You need to find another career, anything like that. Which a lot of people sometimes don't have that support. But I was very lucky with my mom and dad for them to have been there with me and for me. Yeah.
Do you think that there's a spiritual or a religious component to the choice for you to do the work that you did? Does that inform the work in some way, do you feel? I mean, we've talked a little bit before about how you have this gift. You performers in general have a gift, and it's something you need to share. It's it's what you're called to do.
Yeah.
Do you feel that?
Yes, Tina, I believe I'm a very spiritual person. We come from a Baptist background, and there was prayer in our household all the time, and church on Sundays, and just all of my family was very spiritual people. I truly believe that it was a spiritual movement that happened in my mother's womb when it was time for me to be born, to continue this journey for my parents and for my ancestors. Particularly Black people, we're very spiritual people, and we truly believe that we are connected to the ancestors. So I truly believe that there was some ancestor that was connected to me. I think it was Sojourner Truth, because I'm so connected to her, that said that you have to go on this path so that you can tell this story, so that you can become the activist, so that you can be a person who is a voice for not just people of color, but just a voice of bringing people together and understanding one another, trying to understand one another, to move forward in life, to make sure that we are all inclusive and we're all becoming loving towards each other. Because how can you be in the creative arts and be judgmental and not be loving and caring when you're taking on all of this stuff constantly as an artist? So yeah, I truly believe it is a spirit, something spiritual that's moving through me. It has moved through me, and it continues to move through me. Yes.
You mentioned Sojourner Truth, the show, your solo show that you've won multiple awards for, and I
Yeah.
guess you answered the question there by saying, in a way, the leap to that character, the work that she did, and how we know Sojourner Truth in history doesn't seem like a very far leap from the goals that you have personally for yourself. Did you decide to do the show? Did someone come to the show, bring the show to you? Was it a woman whose life you always wanted to? I mean, how did the actual jumping into it come about?
So, okay, that's a great question, Tina. I believe it was back in 1995 or 96. I had came to Philadelphia, and I became the leading actress at Bushfire Theater, which is in West Philadelphia, 52nd and Locust. And at the time, it was Bushfire and Freedom. They were the only two African-American theaters in the city of Philadelphia. And I went to Bushfire, and I was there working as an actress, getting several roles. Brian Anthony Wilson was there working. That's how I met him. Mel Donaldson, all these wonderful performers were working at Bushfire. And they had a workshop there for playwrights. And there's a playwright named Richard Lamont Pierce, who's just absolutely wonderful. And we did a playwright workshop of his one-woman show, Sojourner. Now, I wasn't supposed to play the part. It was another actress, an older actress, who was supposed to play that part, who that show was going to. And after we did the workshop and the reading of the play, she said, right in front of all of us and everyone, "I can't do this. This is too much." And she meant that the burden was just too heavy to carry with what had happened in Sojourner's life and other African-American lives during that time. So the artistic director, Al Simpkins, and the playwright looked at me and said, "Well, Z, you just have to do it." And my mouth just flew open. I said, "I got to do what? I can't play Sojourner Truth? Are you kidding me?" You're talking about Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman. Are you serious?
So what
The
scared you
role,
about was it that you didn't feel up to the task, or as a performer, as a person, or just the having to walk in those shoes?
That's what it was, Tina. It was having to walk in someone like Sojourner Truth's shoes. If you read up on her, you'll find out she was one of the most powerful African Americans that had ever lived. And I was very afraid and said, "I can't do this." So the job was handed to me. And the first time we did it at Bushfire Theater, Doug Keating, who was still around with us, the Inquirer and other papers came out to review the show. And I just knew that I failed Sojourner. I wasn't worrying about the critics or anyone else. I knew I had failed my ancestor in what I was supposed to do. And, I got good reviews and everything. And I'll never forget, during intermission, I was in the dressing room and I just cried. And the stage manager said, "Are you okay?" And they had to really help me get myself together to go back on stage because of this strong force that was starting to move in me. And that's the story of how I got Sojourner. And here in 2020, she's still with me spiritually.
So did you, as you performed her more, did you feel as though she occupied more of your life on stage with that character, and you came to feel, was it after that performance that you felt, okay, I have this now, or was it a gradual thing where you just had to fit into the hugeness of that person?
Yeah. It took me a while, Tina. I didn't fit into this hugeness of this person until I got to Hedgerow Theater. Hedgerow Theater also produced it. Penelope Reed and them over there, they're great people, and they produced it. And that's when I have received my Barrymore nomination for Sojourner. And it wasn't until then, which is like maybe 2 years later, maybe later. No, I'm wrong. It was 95, like 5 years later, 5 to 6 years later. It took me all that time to get into who she was and to fit into her bigness. And there were times that I just didn't feel like that I was worthy of doing that. And eventually, one day, I just felt that I was worthy. It felt like she said to me, "I release you. I trust you with my story. You are worthy." So that's what it felt like. That one time when I went to Hedgerow, and after we finished that entire run, that's what I felt like. She was part of me. And it was taking over my life because there were times that my daughter, it wasn't just on stage. I would be at home. My daughter would say, "Mom, what are you doing?" She said there were times that I was doing movements like Sojourner Truth and things I had studied, and I was speaking like her at times. And I said, okay. So the thing about how actors can actually, those characters can actually come into an actor's personal life, she did that. Yeah. It was scary, but I had to.
Well, in watching the video of the show and the first couple of minutes where you come on stage, and the specificity and articulation of your hands and the way that you moved and sat in the chair, and in the first couple of minutes, there's this enormous weight of this person in the world, and your specificity in articulating that, which I thought was, which was extraordinary. So you've really, you get tapped into to play these spiritual leaders in the community.
No.
Like a gem of the ocean.
I know.
And Esther is what, 285 years old and leading, leading the way. And I think that's a thing, right? I mean, tell me about how one prepares to play 285 years old. Do we just
I would say prayer.
That's a good training tool, right?
Yeah, it's an excellent training tool. A lot of prayer. I have to say, James Imes, who directed that, he was very loving and caring with me through my process. He directed me, but he didn't bother me during the process as much about spiritually what was happening with me. He allowed that to be peaceful. He allowed me to go on that journey. There was a lot of times, I would just sit quietly and I watch the other actors' movement and their work. And it wasn't because I don't think I was looking at them as an actor. I think I was looking at them as Aunt Esther, of watching her children do what they do, of watching these children whose families and generations from before were sitting in the bottom of the ocean. So for some reason, that's what I would do in rehearsal. And all of a sudden, surprisingly, guess who pops into my spirit, into the room? Sojourner. So it seemed like it was Sojourner talking to Aunt Esther and saying, listen, we got to get together, carry this child on this journey, because she's scared and she ain't ready, but we're going to make her ready. So it really felt like those two spirits were entering me, and they were in the room at every rehearsal. And I think James saw that, and, he gave me directions as far as, blocking and things, but he didn't give me too much of direction in the emotional state that I was in. I think he knew that, and he allowed that to happen, and Terry Nolan, when we had to do a rehearsal in front of him, I was very nervous and like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I'll never forget it. After that tech run, something just hit me, and Terry came up to me privately and says, "You're wonderful." And I felt as though it wasn't me who was wonderful. It was Aunt Esther who he was talking to. And it was a hard, difficult journey every night to carry that burden. There were sometimes I would cry uncontrollably, couldn't control myself backstage. And then when I got on stage, there were moments I wasn't supposed to cry, but I was crying. I couldn't control it. It wasn't me. It was Aunt Esther. Yeah. Yeah.
And turning over that, it's a tricky position to be in, right? Enough control that you are winding your way through the play, and enough openness to be able to express what the extraordinary, range of things that you're feeling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you think, there's a question here for you, Zia. I'm going to get these in as we go along. What motivated you to start your own theater company, which is First World Theater Ensemble here in Philadelphia?
Yes.
And what do you think has been the hardest thing about keeping it going? I'm glad we're getting to that, because I was going to get to First World, that you founded a company. Tell us about First World and and your impetus for starting it.
So I'm going to do as fast as I can to answer the questions as quickly. I realized when I came to Philadelphia, unlike New York at the time, there were only two places that African American artists mostly were working. That was at Freedom Theater and Bushfire. I would go to other theaters, and once in a while I would see an African American on stage, but I wouldn't see the images of my people on stage in white companies. So I said, there has to be another place for them to go. So I decided, hey, I'm going to start my own theater company. I had no money or anything like that. I had $100, and I took the $100 and got in corporate. In our first show, I just so happened to know a bunch of actors and said, can we put this play together? And everybody came together and did it for me without being paid. I was able just to feed everyone. And at the end of the run, I was able to give everyone something. And that's how that started. It got started because there was lack of opportunity for African American actors here, I noticed, in the city of Philadelphia. And we needed some place to tell our stories, some place to go. But as time went on, I had to open it up, and we became more inclusive. So we started telling different stories. You would see maybe a Latino actor on stage, or you might see a Caucasian actor on stage. And, I got a little riff behind that, but that was okay too, because it's supposed to have been created for African Americans, but we can't keep living in that one shell. We have to open up and share. So that's how we got started, because there were no opportunities. There was lack of opportunities here in the city of Philadelphia. I forgot Venture Theater was around at that time too. And Betty Lindley and H. German Wilson was the artistic director of that. German was one of my mentors, and they were producing a lot of African American plays, but it wasn't an African American theater company. It wasn't, yeah.
Just to back up to something you said before, you said you were getting a little rift for it. Was it because you were only focusing on plays about African American actors or stories or experiences?
No. I was getting a little riff for it because I had started inviting like maybe a white actor to come and do the show or something like that. It was not a person of color. So, right. Little things people start talking. But I'm a person who I don't care what you say. So it doesn't bother me. I feel as though I have the strength of Sojourner. So, it doesn't bother me at all.
I do remember meeting when we first met back at the Triangle Theater over in Northern Liberties when Jane Stojek was running that theater, and you were doing, is it My Name is Sapphire, Damn It?
Yes,
And
my name is, that's the same playwright, Richard Lamont
Richard Lamont
Pierce, who
Pierce,
wrote
right?
Sojourner, the same playwright. Yes.
And I just remember walking in that room and thinking, this is like I thought this is a person that can move mountains. I just
Oh,
felt that about you.
thank you.
And but isn't it funny how you get a vibration of somebody and like it literally is the thing, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So on that subject of moving mountains, there's so many questions coming in here. So there's a question about what brought you from New York City to Philadelphia, and then I want to go back to we'll go back to First World.
Okay, that's a good question. What brought me from New York City to Philadelphia? Because my parents had moved here, and I was living in New York because I didn't like Philadelphia. I didn't like I was just used to the fast pace. So I went back to New York, and I lived there and I stayed with my aunt and everything because my parents wouldn't allow me to live by myself. No, you're not going to do that. You have to live with somebody. So I stayed with my aunt, and the reason why I had to come back to Philadelphia was that my mother had gotten sick first. And in April of 1997, she passed away. And then my father was still living. And then I had to move in. My daughter and I moved in to take care of my dad. And that is the only reason I came back to Philadelphia. Otherwise, I would still probably be in New York. And that was the reason why I came here. And then I said, well, I'm here in Philadelphia. I'm getting used to it. Philadelphia's getting used to me. I kind of like the groove. I can always go to New York and work, start your company, and let's go to work.
And First World still is up today. You're still working and using, in addition to productions, using First World as a major voice in
Yes.
discussions and really important conversations that are happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see did you know when you were doing Sojourner, or when, you know, of course, Gem of the Ocean was much more recently, but when did you start to literally execute the mama bear part of it, the spiritual leader, the whole, like, when Z calls you go part of it, you know? When did that start to happen where you, it's so true though. It's like,
but that is, I'm like,
Z's on the phone, we're going.
I feel like a Hollywood producer. Oh my God, that's Mama Z. Let's go. Let's get on the plane. We gotta go.
Well, that's your, you know, that's the importance. I mean, you know, a spiritual leader is a leader, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's because you're asking, but it's also because it's important.
Yes. Yes.
When did that aspect of your personality and your advocacy and your being start to really be apparent to you?
I've always been an advocate and an activist because of my household. Because my parents and we were always involved in some sort of movement. My mother was one of the ones who protests the MOVE incident with the MOVE people when they bombed that whole neighborhood. She was involved in that. And before that, you know, I remember when I was 6 years old, they took me to see Martin Luther King when I saw him speak. I'll never forget that. And when I was like 12, I went and saw Malcolm X speak. So I think the activism person that has always been inside of me, but I think it really kicked off when what was it? I was at Hedgerow Theater, and I was doing, there's a piece by Richard Lamont Pierce called Twilight Time. And it's a piece that deals with Alzheimer. You know, my mother is dying from Alzheimer, and I'm the older daughter, and I'm the one who have to, excuse me, make a decision on what we're going to do with my mom. And I'll never forget when we took a curtain call, it was nothing but a sea of white people. And I said, this is not good. I don't like this feeling. There was not one Black person sitting in that audience who had came to see a show that dealt with the way that African Americans deal with Alzheimer's. It's a disease that can attack anyone. And there was none of us in that audience to hear what this playwright or the actors have said about it. So I said, I can't let this happen anymore. I don't want to ever to perform where it's just a sea of white people or any other people, just them anymore. Something has to be done. So then that's where that table turned, and I said, okay, what can I do to start getting people? So, I talked to Hedro, so, we can get these people bussed in and, excuse me, let's talk to the churches and things like that. So, and then you start seeing an audience of mix, Black people, white people sitting side by side, sitting together, enjoying stories that are being told on the stage. So it kicked in around that time. I mean, it was always there, but I said, something has to be done. So that's when it started.
And was it largely because of the story you were telling, which is this Alzheimer's journey is important for people to understand, and and theater is a way to get that information across in a way that is maybe a little bit more accessible or a little bit easier. The idea that I want my community to understand that this is a thing that may hit them.
Yes.
In their families, and it's going to devastate your family. And
Correct. It was about that, and it was just important for my people to see this could hit your family. This is going to be very devastating. You need to understand the process. You need to understand what you're going to go through. You need to understand how it's going to affect the family and all of that. And yes, it was very important for them to see that, and they just weren't there to see it. And I said, this will never happen again. I don't care whose theater, if I see majority of whatever, I'm going to probably go to the producer, somebody say, hey, listen, I don't have too much clout, but I can probably help you get some churches or somebody in here, people of a different color to come in and see all this wonderful work that you're doing. So yeah, that was the major part of it, Tina.
With Sojourner, were you satisfied that your audiences were diverse enough? I mean, from both white and Black audiences to see and understand, because imagine even if you understand the history of Sojourner, which I knew a little bit about, but it is such an extraordinary life that, I mean, did you feel at the end of that, and I'm sure you're still performing the show, but do you feel that that history is out there now?
Yeah, I felt it felt good to see Black and white people come into the theater and hear the story of Sojourner. It was a painful journey because a lot of times I would leave from out of the audience and I would meet the audience and things like that, and they would shake my hand, and a lot of white people would say to me, "I'm so sorry," and my response would be, "Well, it wasn't you. I understand it was the ancestors of part of who you are, but you didn't do this. You came to see a woman who's going through this, and you felt what she was going through, and you paid homage to her, and you're here, and you're trying to understand, so it's okay." And then there were times, I had Black audience, they come out, I'm standing shaking hands, they're crying, they're bawling, and they're saying things like, "This hurt. This was a painful journey." But that's a good thing. For me, pain was good on both sides of that audience because they came together to understand what racism and hatred can do to people. So it was just, I was glad that it happened. It happened, in DC. Every year I'm like, I get invited to the DC Black Theater Festival every year. Like, it's like Sojourner is the main show every year there. And I recall one year I was just so tired. I said, I'm not going to come to DC. I just can't do it. It's so draining to perform her. And they were like, no, you have to come and bring Sojourner. So every year she's in DC, and we were at Arena Stage when we did it. And I got the same response from Black and white audiences of how painful the journey was, and they were thanking me for allowing them to release what they were feeling. And it felt good to me that they had that opportunity.
Let me take another question. So this is a question. Did you say, Zahara, just clarifying, is it that one of your relatives is it Jabo Smith?
No, Bessie Smith.
Bessie Smith. Okay. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
She was our cousin.
Right. That's,
yes.
I thought that's what, and let's see, I want to make sure that I get everybody's question. I want to circle back around to the work with First World, and sort of what will you and are you looking to do with First World, Zahara, in terms of to be a voice, to be a leader in the community? Do you have, what is that going to look like for you over, say, the next couple of years?
Ooh, making sure people are safe when they come to First World, making sure people understand that they are open to feel the way they feel. That's very important. And making sure that people understand that this is a place of, when we say diversity and inclusiveness, that's what it is. There's no backpedaling. There's no representation of words, and then there's no action behind it. We want people to understand that. We want people to understand that, yes, we're a small company, but we're mighty. I want to make sure, I want First World to be involved, more active in Black arts mattering and Black lives mattering, and this whole inclusive, diverse thing that's happening. It's very important that we do that, because if we don't, we will lose a legacy that has come before us. Places like New Federal Theater and the Negro Ensemble Company during the Black Arts Movement there. I call this the new, I'm calling it the Black Arts Movement 2.0. That's what I'm calling it. But and not just the Black arts movement, for everybody, people of color, and for the gay community. It doesn't matter, as long as the movement is moving forward in the right direction and it's not hurting one another. That's our goal. And that your stories are being represented with dignity and class, and no matter what story it is, that we are moving forward to telling those stories in that way, but yet staying involved, being an activist and moving forward, moving the movement forward. Yeah.
I'm curious about, we had a little bit of a conversation about this the other day, how in a room, in a rehearsal room, and you're creating art, and this question of making sure everyone is safe in the room, and it has different, a different meaning to different people that are in the room. And you and I talked a little bit about, we joke around a lot with each other, and sort of creating that, but sort of that's a language that you and I understand, because I've known you for a little while. But I guess, have there been instances, or what would be an instance that where you wouldn't feel comfortable, maybe, or have there been? And if you don't want to talk that specifically about it, what can be, how do we keep the art going and not be afraid to be together? And this applies to all different kinds of questions in a rehearsal room, right?
Something did happen to me, and I'll tell you what had happened. By me feeling uncomfortable at a white theater, but then the adjustment was made. But I know for First World, we were doing a play written play by a playwright named Glenn Allen, and it was they were in rehearsal, and I wasn't around that day because I didn't direct it. Ozzie Jones was our director for this production. And I never knew that one of the females felt uncomfortable. And she said, I think because it was brought to me that, the guys was just talking trash, because it was an all-male cast, one female talking trash, and she didn't feel comfortable, whatever. But she never came to me, because I'm the type person, if you come straight to me, I'm going to make sure that gets settled right then, even if I have to terminate and fire someone. I'm not a firm, but I'm not a believer in keeping people on who's making other people uncomfortable. You will get fired at First World Theater. I didn't know that she was uncomfortable. But then when I found out the whole story, I had to have a conversation with her. I said, for real? That wasn't something, and they weren't even talking about her. They were in the room with talking, relaxing on their downtime, and she just so happened to walk into the room while they weren't even talking about women. They were just talking about their life as Black men. And she got offended by it. I said, you can't get offended behind someone's talking about being Black in America. So it wasn't that deep to me, but I did address the guys, and I said, listen, you have to, whatever you're talking about, I need you to go downstairs, find another room and talk privately when she's not around, because I don't want her uncomfortable. And for me, Tina, this generation is like, you have to walk on glass around this generation now, and I understand fully with all the things that are going on. I respect everyone, and I do understand when things go too far and you're uncomfortable. I'm totally for that. But you and I, we're friends. There's no way I'm going to say, Tina, it's making me uncomfortable because we made a joke about something about you and I personally. I'm not going to go back and say, oh, she made me uncomfortable. It was a joke. That was a private joke between us. But there are times when people can say things and do things to make you uncomfortable. And I'm for that, for making sure that does not happen. Because as I said, it happened to me. What happened was, and I'm going to give them a shout out because they were so wonderful. It was at People's Light. And I have to give People's Light a shout out. I love Aaron, Zach, Abby. I love them all over there. They just do great things. And I had fun. I was doing Coleman Domingo's play, Dot. And there was something about my wig. They had a white stylist, and he had cut one wig blonde. He had cut it perfectly, and then the red one was not cut perfectly. And before that, we had consultations of how the hair would look and everything. And I'm looking in the paperwork of the magazine. I'm saying, yeah, that's how Black women with the feather, that's how we wear short hair. But the hair didn't come out like that. So I was very uncomfortable with that, and I didn't like it. And I was talking to him one day, telling him this is not the way Black women wear their hair. I know how we wear our hair. He was very rude to me. He was very sarcastic. He said things to me like, well, you can't tell me how to wear your hair. I know how you wear your hair. So it was like sort of racist, and I didn't like it. So I left the room very uncomfortable about that. And when I got back in the dressing room, the actor was like, what's wrong, Zahara? And I was really pissed off. And I was about to go to one of the, to Aaron someone and say something to them, but I didn't have to because they were already on it. That stage manager went back and told the artistic team what happened. And they came into that room and made me feel comfortable and took care of that problem right away. And I give them kudos for that. And this is how we're supposed to work with one another. This is how we're supposed to protect one another, to be concerned with each other. And if something racist has happened, we need to nip that in the bud and just fix it right away. And that's what they did. People's Light is one of my favorite places to work. And I love those guys. And I thank them for that moment when I felt uncomfortable, that they rectified that situation right away.
So it's having, one of the things to keep in mind is that everybody's ears are attuned.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To the conversations that are happening. Your stage manager, everybody is in the picture, and we should all be taking care of each other, listening.
Yes.
And I want to jump back. I want to just jump back for a quick hot second to
take a bite of my sandwich.
Yes, absolutely. This is a dinner conversation, and we started off this show literally doing like my dinner, like my dinner with like literally eating kind of thing. But then we realized that with two people, it's really hard to eat and ask questions and do that. So eat your sandwich while I ask you about. And let me just check down in here. I'll go back to a couple of questions in here too. Well, you can chew, right? And I'll ask you to think about what it's like working with Coleman Domingo. Sorry, I'm thinking dot.
Yes.
Coleman being a writer, and he directed that show as well, right?
Yes.
And a friend of yours. And so that's an interesting writer, director. That's got to be an interesting, I mean, he's, clearly wedded to the material, but did that provide some challenges, some opportunities, was it different to have your director be also the writer?
Oh, yes, it was very different. I'm a person, I don't believe that writers should direct their own pieces. because they're too close to it. They have specific ways of what they want done. They don't allow much of the creativity for the actor or whatever to come out and explore things. But Coleman Domingo did a wonderful job at directing his own piece. It was just so funny. There were moments when we're talking about the play and he's in the room and he'll say, you know, if there was something about the writing, he'll say, okay, the director's leaving the room now. And he's sitting there.
Say whatever you want.
know?
I thought he was so eloquent at your meeting that you held, your meeting on racism at First World, and he, you know, virtually came in from Los Angeles. And I thought his comments were so beautiful, and
Yeah.
And I can only imagine what it would be like to be in the room with him.
Oh, Tina, it was like a light of joy. He is like this bright sun that just shines. He's so kind and warm and loving, but he's very demanding. So I'll tell people, you know, listen, if you're going to work with Coleman Domingo, you have to bring your A game because he does not play around. And I can understand because he takes the art very seriously. You know, this is not a game. You know, he takes it as a surgeon takes heart surgery or heart transplant seriously, and that's the way Coleman Domingo takes this wonderful world of the arts. And it was just wonderful working with him, and it was fast paced, and there was no letting up, and like that was the first time I ever had to go home and go, oh my God, I got to be ready tomorrow.
I got 12 hours.
Right, because he was like, no, let's go.
So was that the thing that made him, you know, if we say A game, is for you that there was just no, I'll go home and take a couple of hours rest here, but it's like, no, I've got a night's work ahead of me because
Yes.
because he's thinking that much ahead of the game, and he knows
Yes.
exactly what he wants.
Yes, that's exactly what would happen. I think that happened to all of us. We would go home, like I would get home late and take a shower and go right back to the script. I would get up 6 o'clock in the morning, eat some breakfast, in the script, because once you enter that room with Coleman Domingo, there was a certain quality, a certain demand, a certain level of expectation that he was waiting for when you come into that room. His thing is, you have this resume, you call yourself a professional, then you have to deliver, baby. And he would, he would write all of us, but I know when I was going through so much at that one time. I had taken on different projects, and then I was going through some other things, and I'll never forget, you know, I was there, and the weekend I didn't know my lines, and I was freaking out, I was panicking, and he was like, baby girl, you got to know these lines. When you come back here on Tuesday, you better know these lines. And when I came back on Tuesday, I was ready, and it was so wonderful. He said, oh, I see you coming to the room now. It was just a wonderful experience to work with him. And me, I just texted him about a week ago when we talked in text and everything. We always talk, and it was a wonderful experience. And I always tell people, if you get a chance to work with Coleman Domingo, you got to strap up and you got to be ready, because it's a hell of a ride.
Get your jets on.
Yeah.
So let's jump. There's a question here. How do you balance being a producer and an actor and a director in this community?
A project at a time. I make a decision whether I want to direct it or if I want to act in it. Quintessence. I just did Rachel at Quintessence before COVID-19 came around and started bothering us. And there I was an actor. I was called in for an audition and got the part. So I take each project, one project at a time, and I make a decision. Am I going to direct this? Am I going to produce this? Am I going to act in this? Now, there have been times where I produced it, directed, and acted in it, but I didn't want to act in it. There were times when things just didn't work out with an actress or whatever, or an actor, and I just had to release them. And at the time, it was such short notice, there was no one to call in, so I stepped into the to the acting shoes. But I don't like doing that because it takes away. I truly believe you can be a jack of all trades and a master of none. And if you take so much, you become so overwhelmed, something is going to fail. And it has
Mhm.
happened with me and my company because I'm doing directing, acting, producing. And not just that, I would have a show running that First World and I would be out of town in New York, DC, somewhere performing.
Mhm.
And here I'm producing the show and directing the show. And, I would have to leave tech rehearsal. I couldn't be at tech rehearsal because I had to be somewhere else performing. So I had to learn my lesson. That was a hard lesson to learn. So I pick my battles very carefully now.
I'm gonna pick up on that lesson. I'm gonna follow that
Yeah,
lesson,
you
Z.
need
That's a
to pick
lesson
up on that lesson.
I do need to pick up on that lesson. Maybe I'll call you and you can direct the next show, and then we can like,
That'd be
I,
cool.
I I think that's one of the real challenges, right? You have a small theater company and it's
Yeah,
never an excuse for anything, but it isn't like your first story that you told us about starting First World. You're like,
yeah,
okay, I gave everybody dinner and we got together and everybody was really willing. And that is
yeah,
the joy and sort of the beauty of it, right? The
yeah.
magic of it. And then you get to
Mhm.
a point where you're like, okay, all right, it's year number 15. And I think maybe we need to revisit this. And it's that growing the organization,
Yeah,
which is what I'm, is what we all, is what we grapple with when it starts out that way.
yeah.
Um, Getting back to the conversations that First World is the meetings that First World has been hosting, a couple of
Mhm,
meetings. You had one, and
mhm.
then um, and what do you see as the um, the gold for First World and for the community? There are a number of people, and we're all having conversations about this. What is the hope that you have? Is that that we all come together and know each other a little better,
Mhm.
can make strides forward in terms of very real changes? What are the things you want to see?
Well, first and foremost, what I would like to see, and then if we can talk honestly, is that African American artists um, are not seen as Black people when they walk into the room, that they're seen as a human being. And I know that's easier said than done, that when they walk into the room, that people don't have these other ideas about what African American people are and what Black people, don't have these preconceived ideas about us. When we walk into the room, as someone's directing us, or don't have in your mind, I have to direct this person differently than I have to direct this person over here. That has happened. Directors use different techniques. There are
How
techniques that you use when you um,
So what would that look like? What would that
that
feel
looks
like?
like that looks like Tina. You and I are in a show, and we're going along, and the director says, "Well, yeah, you're on the right path, but I need you to be a little bit more ethnic. For real? Come on." Um, I had someone say that to me one time. They told my agent that we wanted to hire her, but she wasn't ethnic enough. So you're telling me I'm not Black enough? I am Black. So I want that to change. I want people to stop speaking for us and stop assuming or feeling for us. I want people to stop saying we're going to have this meeting at the table with our board members, and we're figuring out ways to how to do anti-racist things. Figure out programs and strategies. How can you do that when you don't even have me sitting at the table to help you figure it out? Because it's not happening to you; it's happening to us. So
Mhm.
I want that clarity to happen. I want us to be at those, and invite us to sit on the board. Invite us, if you're going to develop these programs of systemic racism to fight that, then you can't fight that in a room full of 10 white people.
Mhm.
You have to have a Black person. You have to have a Latino. You have to have an Asian, because it's not happening to you. We need to be at that table. So I want to move forward with that. I want to make sure also, I want to move forward with the gay community, to make sure that they are heard loud and clear in what they're doing. You know, I want to make sure that my trans people, particularly Black trans people, are being heard with their stories. A lot of times their stories can't get on the stage. No one wants to hear a trans person's story. Maybe in the white theaters they might, but I know a lot of times, because with Black people, they don't want to hear a trans story about what's happening into trans, as an African American transgender person. So I want to move forward with that. I just want people, we don't have to like each other as far as black, white, green, or yellow, but we have to respect one another. And we need to make sure that when we're in the room, we are respecting each other with dignity and with grace. And that's what First World wants to make sure happens, that we are respected, that we are treated equally like anyone else, that we are being paid equally like anyone else, that we are human beings who have feelings and who go through pain and everything else like anyone else. That's the future of First World. So when you come to our theater, you come to work with us, we are going to make sure that happens for you. No matter what color you are when you come to that door. When you leave, you're going to say, First World, they're a small company. They don't have a big budget. They don't have a lot of money, but I sure felt good working there. That's what we want. Yeah.
And does that circle back? Do you feel that advocacy is just an extension of like, there was not a question for you that you needed to step forward in with part Sojourner, part Esther, part Aunt Esther, and take that, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say mama bear role in the community to shepherd along younger actors. You've been such a great force in just being there for helping people to find their way in this community. And that's seems like the roles and the person and the advocacy is one wellspring.
Yeah. I think so, Tina. And it just took on its own wings. And in the 60s and 70s, we had the Black Arts Movement. But this time, we're having the arts movement 2.0.
2.0.
Yeah, this is 2.0. And this isn't just, Black people involved, but this is for everybody. This is the movement. I'm going to make sure that, first of all, I'm going to do my best to stay on the front line, that this is a movement that everybody gets treated equally and fairly. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it's about. And we have our next town hall coming up too. So
I know. Well, give us a little plug for the next town hall. It's August 31st?
Yes, it's August 31st. It's at CEC, 3500 Lancaster Avenue, and it will be on Zoom. You'll be able to go to our website in the next couple of days, firstworldtheater.org, and get all the Zoom information. It's going to be, we've invited 25 people privately to come in, where we're doing social distancing and everything like we did before. And then we have a panel of wonderful people from around the city of Philadelphia, from the theater companies and, from different theater companies. And this time, this is about, because I've been listening and following a lot of companies, particularly white companies, are coming up with strategic ways to help fight systemic racism. So this is, and to find out what, and laying the plan down of what they can do more so to assist people of color in the community. So this town hall is about, we're going to tell you strategically what is it that we need and how you can go about doing it, instead of you just assuming or coming up with all these. Because you have to have wonderful ideas, but as I said before, you can't do it without us sitting at the table. So this is the plan to make sure that both sides are comfortable, that both sides are getting what they deserve from one another, that both sides realize that we can work together, because you have to have allies. We can't do it without them. they can't do it without us. And the reason why I say they can't do it without us is because they put on Black plays. So you put on our playwright plays. Sometimes Black people, they come and sit in your seats in the theater. So you're collecting that money from our people or Latino people or Asian people. They're coming to come and see these plays. So where do we come into the part of this? You know, you have your Black director, but then you might have a white costume designer. I had one actress who gave a story about they had a white costume designer at one of the theaters, and the woman didn't understand her body because she was a full-figured Black woman. So the costume designer didn't design the proper costume for her, and the actor was uncomfortable. And she said, this doesn't feel good on me. The costume designer says, well, I don't know what to do. So see, you see what I mean? That can't happen. It just can't happen. It has to be a fair ground on both sides. So the plan, 2.0, the plan is about how do we go forward strategically with these plans and making sure that it's comfortable for everyone, not just for one side, for everyone. We've had several town hall meetings. I'm proud of First World. We started back a long time ago. We've done town hall meetings on police brutality. We had, people represented from the mayor's office that came. We've had town hall meetings on things like health. We've had town hall meetings on molestation. So we're constantly moving in this activity of making sure these socially issue-driven things are talked about and are brought to the awareness table. So I'm kind of proud. Our last town hall was about does racism exist in theater and how can we heal from the community? And as you can see, it was a very explosive one because there was so much pain and pain and not understanding one another. And also failures, where people have failed people. So and you can't put it under the table. You have to talk about it. You just can't walk in the room, the elephant's sitting there, and we act like we don't see the elephant. So it has to be talked about, and let's figure out how we can move forward. So I'm excited about 2.0, the plan, inclusiveness for all. That's the name of it, inclusiveness for all, 2.0.
I think if you're heading up 2.0, I think that you're going to be the leader and it's going to go well. That's what I think.
So, Tina, and people are going to take that, right? It's going to be all over the place. The arts movement 2.0. They're going to take my idea, right?
Okay. It's your idea.
Go for it. Yeah. Go for it.
No. Zahara Mcgill, it's been just such a pleasure to watch you eat a sandwich and
I know.
So
I'm
much
taking
more.
another bite. Here you go.
To do so much more. Thank you for everything you're doing for the community as an artist. I would love to have you back again and talk about more 2.0, when we can do this another time. Let me just a compliment to you, Z, about your beautiful spirit, Z, which is when Z calls, you go. And there's for that.
That's horrible, Tina. That's horrible.
No, that's not, because that's not true of everything and everybody, but like there's a larger purpose, and that's clear that, that's what you embody. So I just want to thank you so much, Zahara, for being here. And to everybody who's in the audience, thank you so much for joining in. And I hope you'll be with us next week at 5 p.m. when John Rosenberg, who is, he's the head of Hella Fresh Theater here in Philadelphia, and he's got some interesting things and ways of looking at theater, pretty exciting stuff going on. So we'll see you then next Saturday at 5 p.m. And Zahara, I'm going to let you get back to your sandwich.
Yes.
And we're up at the 6 o'clock hour. So thanks everybody for being here, and see, keep on keeping on.
Thank you for having me, Tina. I love you all. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, darling.